Hi, this is Rod Faulkner, and you are listening to the 7thmatrix.com Eye on Sci-Fi podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 189 of the 7thmatrix.com Eye on Sci-Fi podcast. The podcast where we share with you terrific indie, science fiction and fantasy, online short films, web series, and other closely related media. We also, on occasion, have interesting conversations with the talented creators who are producing terrific indie speculative work. Thank you for joining me, and in this episode, we have a special guest. Jordan P. Jackson is an interdisciplinary artist, comic book writer, animator, and graphic designer based in Baltimore, Maryland. Jordan is the founder of J.P. Jackson Art, a production company that empowers intersectional storytelling through comics and animation. J.P. Jackson Art was born out of the necessity for empowering Black artists and storytellers. I had the pleasure of meeting JP at this year's Virtuous Con, and I was struck by his beautiful artwork. He kindly agreed to take time to come on the show to discuss his dystopian, cyberpunk, independently produced comic book series entitled The Eve of Insurrection. We go deep in this conversation. So without further ado, please enjoy the Eye on Sci-Fi podcast conversation with J.P. Jackson, the creator of the comic book series, The Eve of Insurrection. J.P. Jackson, man, welcome to Eye on Sci-Fi podcast.
Hey, Rod, how's everything, man?
Look, like you, it's been busy, but going pretty well.
Good to hear.
So you are a visual artist, and you will be the first visual artist that I've had on the podcast so far. I've had authors. Yeah, I've had authors. I've had comic book creators, which you're a comic book creator as well. And I've had television producers and actors because I cover mainly sci-fi short films. But you're my first visual artist, so I'm really excited about that.
This is a great honor. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, the pleasure is mine. So let's talk about who or what first inspired your love of science fiction. What's your origin story?
So my dad showed me the Transformers movie, the very first one.
Oh, wow.
So this is an emotional movie. Some things are going to happen. The first time I saw this movie, I cried. I was like, okay. Because I'd watched, what is it? The early 2000s Transformers, Beast Wars. So he was like, all right, son, you got to watch the original movie. And that was one of the first animated films. I watched Princess Mononoke as well.
Oh, that's another good one.
It was Star Wars as well. Star Wars is probably truly what the real answer was. Probably Star Wars. I remember going to the movie theaters to watch the first Phantom Menace. And
wow.
I would have been, what was that, 99?
I believe.
Yeah, I was like 5 or 6. I would probably 5 or 6.
Oh, man, you're making me feel old.
It's okay. And so that was like the first kind of journeys into science fiction. For me, it was mostly like film, animation, games. That was my kind of venture. That was how I got into it.
Okay. And then you're a visual artist. So how did that come about? Your love of art?
So the journey started. So my dad, once again, because my dad and my mom, my dad, he had this DC encyclopedia book with all different superheroes. And when I was in 4th grade, I copied every splash page that had Superman or Wonder Woman on it. So I would just draw the figure. And so I did that entire book, and I lost all the drawings, lost them all.
Oh.
And then my parents were like, they noticed my talent for art, even at my 4th or 5th grade. So they're like, hey, you should go to an art middle school, magnet middle school. I grew up in Baltimore, so I went to Baltimore County. So I went to this art magnet school. It was probably like 20 minutes from my house.
Okay.
And, studied art there. Sunbrook Magnet Middle School, I studied art there. Did mostly like still lives and like figurative drawing. And then I went to, it was a pipeline. So then my art teacher was like, hey, you should go to this art. It's like high school for paint. Another magnet high school is called Carver Center for Arts and Technology. And so I went there and studied painting And I loved painting because I sucked at it in the beginning. But once I found my kind of style, I really enjoyed oil painting. And so when I
Okay.
was in high school, I was doing these charcoal drawings and oil paintings of me as a cyborg. Like I was always interested in technology and the idea of hooking my body up to different cables and dissecting myself with different cables like this. These are things I was doing in high school. Like I was thinking about this stuff. I didn't know Afrofuturism was a thing at the time. And then when I went to college, I did animation, studied animation, and then I learned about Afrofuturism. I'm like, oh, well, this is where I fit into all of this.
Yeah.
So a lot of the themes that I dealt with in high school came up in college, like cybernetics and AI. So I like did a few animations about that stuff when I was in college. And then I got into post-apocalyptic stuff, which we talked about when we first met. And then after I graduated in 2016, I had been just playing around with these like different stories and ideas that I wanted to tell. And I ultimately ended up working for other self-published authors, Black writers and authors, science fiction authors. And they are the reason that I'm here today. Part of the reason, just because they gave me an opportunity to illustrate their books and turn them into comic books and graphic novels. So that's when, after working for them, I learned from them the power of ownership and having claim to your own intellectual property. And so I was like, I need to create something for myself, like legit copyright published. And so I did that with EVE of Insurrection.
Fantastic. And I really do appreciate you bringing that up. That is so important for Black artists, Black creators to really create their own intellectual property, because many feel more comfortable playing in other worlds that they're more, how should I say this, that they're more familiar with.
Exactly.
It's better to create your own story so that you tell it your way.
I was always, I get it. I was always that person. I was always that person. I always wanted to tell my own stories. And I felt like I had this kind of anxiousness about just going into the animation industry like full time and like thinking about, Jordan, it's going to be harder for you to potentially do your own work. And sometimes certain companies, I had professors scare me and were like, if you work for certain studios, they're going to own everything you make, even outside. I'm like, no, this can't be. And so that scared me. That scared me, but also motivated me to be like, all right, I love telling my own story, so I have to put all my effort into doing this myself. And then eventually I had to grow from that point and learn, oh, you need to hire people and collaborate, build more community. And I'm like, that's where I'm at right now. So I'm actually enjoying that way more than just being the solo creator. It's not what I want to do.
It's about community. Let's talk about the EVE of Insurrection. And I got my physical copy weeks ago and you signed it. Thank you very much. And man, I loved it, JP. So for our listeners, just explain what the premise of the EVE of Insurrection is.
Okay. So the EVE of Insurrection is a science fiction, cyberpunk series set in a world where corporations own everything like today, but they build these massive underground cities. And we're following the main character, Lana Baker. So she's the woman on this front cover, on the alternate cover. And she's a philanthropist and comes from a long line of wealthy Black families that have created their own utopia within this underground city. And so Lana is a philanthropist by day, and then by night, she is the Shadow Queen, who's the leader of a criminal syndicate known as the EVE Syndicate. And they strike back against mega corporations, taking their resources, fighting police robots and different gangs to just help other people. But unfortunately, Lana's been doing this kind of work for some years now, and things aren't really changing. She's growing frustrated and more exhausted with the system and what's continued to happen in this world. So she devises a plan that would change everything. And I'm not going to spoil it.
Spoiler free zone.
I don't know what or how she does it, but we're going to have to find out and get to that point. But it's going to be like, this is issue number 1 of 7. So the one that you have is the first issue, and I have an alternate cover. And so we're really looking at an insurrection over 7 days, or like the process to starting that. And that's my little cyberpunk story, or big. I don't know. It's turning into a massive universe now, which is a lot, but we'll get into that later.
I say it's pretty sprawling. I can tell by the first issue.
Sprawling, yes. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things we can get into. And I'm like, I need to tell separate stories just for these certain aspects. Like, it's just so much. But
I love Lana Baker. I loved her character, and I commend you for centering a Black woman. But I was thinking about her, and I was comparing her to one of the most popular superheroes that's out there, and that's Batman. And
Sure.
comparing and
That's
contrast.
valid. That's
Yeah,
valid.
no, follow me here.
Yeah.
So I don't personally care for Batman.
Of
I think
course. Of
he
course.
is the ultimate, specifically white male power fantasy
Yeah.
because he is white, he is super rich, and has access to endless resources. But unlike Lana, Lana is a part of her community. And it's a spoiler-free zone. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I love that first opening sequence when you see her and she operates pretty much what is a futuristic neighborhood bodega. The community comes in and out, and she knows the community. She knows the kids. They know her. And so she really is part of the fabric of that community when she could be removed because, as you say, she is very affluent and she doesn't have to mix with all of the segments of society, especially the people who are struggling, who are the people that she protects. As a kid, you are exposed to Superman and Batman. But when I got older, I realized that Bruce Wayne supposedly is this valiant protector of Gotham, but he is removed. He has to
Yep.
travel into the city.
Yep.
And even his alter ego, Batman's alter ego, Bruce Wayne, if he is involved in the community, it's pretty much he's writing a chant, but you don't see him on the ground intermingling with the people he is supposedly protecting. And you would think that Gotham is this hellhole and it is renowned for being gritty and hyper violent, and it produces all these psychotic villains that he has to fight. And I'm thinking, why doesn't Bruce Wayne investigate what is the source behind?
Exactly.
So I love Lana because she is the polar opposite of a Bruce Wayne. How would you describe her personality? You're welcome.
So, trying to explain it. So, I've kind of pulled Lana's personality type from myself, my wife, and a few friends and looking at a Black woman who can see the good in humanity, but also see the negative. And she's willing to cross that line if need be. And like I said earlier, like her exhaustion is coming from a place of she's been serving her community for so long and giving so much, but unfortunately her cup hasn't been refilled or renewed in a way. So she's almost a little obsessive. I think about like Lana's like, I believe my purpose is to be an artist and try to teach and give people knowledge. So that's my top priority. And so it's how Lana thinks. I need to do everything at all costs to be as helpful to my community and try to stop bad in the world, try to help other people. She's also noble in a way, very noble, like most kind of superheroes.
So let's put a pin in that for a moment and backtrack. So
yes,
the setting of the eve of insurrection, there has been a nuclear war that occurred in the 21st century. Then fast forward to 300 years in the future, and most of humanity is now underground in what is called corporate bunker cities. Is that correct?
You are correct. You got it.
Okay, so explain what these are and what life is like for a common citizen that's there.
Okay. So I planned for there to be like across the world, there will be these different underground cities. Of course, you have different cultural groups, depending on which nation you're in particularly. But with the one that we're looking at, I like to think about it is if it's being like an underground version of DC or somewhere in like a DMV overall. Okay. And so in the underground district itself, because no one has really seen this, but a Johns Hopkins University class that I just went to earlier this week. I actually showed them the designs for the entire structure.
Wow.
And so basically it's like your conventional tower or that goes underground. There's the underground district. Then over top of that would be like some type of like nuclear reactor. And then above that would be like a conservatory of like basically plants, life, different types of animals, maybe like a massive ocean, something wild like that. And then on top of that is called the Echelon District. So this is where all the ultra wealthy families live. There wouldn't be a lot of people up there, but literally everyone else lives underground. But in the underground district, The society is set up. Did you watch Sorry to Bother You?
No, I haven't watched that yet.
Okay. They played around with this concept where corporations basically have created an entire like just way of life for you. So you once you get a job, you like don't need to find housing because the corporation provides with housing, food,
Okay.
healthcare, everything. So it's that similar setup where within every district, every citizen works for the corporation.
Okay.
And then there's issues of race as well that come up, like the major corporation Solace that Jasmine's family works for because she goes to school there.
Okay.
She is one of the examples of how you have Black constituents or Black employees that don't have the best resources, or the police aren't properly, the police force isn't prioritizing trying to help her find her siblings, that type of thing. There's still that kind of inequity. And so that's what happens in the underground zone. So there's a lot of inequity, there's a lot of segregation because every corporation is, in a way, is almost, I'm going to say it's like a racial metaphor. Maybe it's like a racial metaphor. I don't know. But every corporation is predominantly ruled by a certain ethnic group. So we'll have like,
Not surprising.
yeah, I have another corporation that is basically if Chinese, Korean, Japanese people came together, made their own kind of territory. You have a super pro-Black capitalist society. You have another group that controls like food and distribution, and they have their own gangs and territories that operate for them as well. So it's those different elements coming together. But it's overall, I feel like it's not Gotham bad. Well, maybe it is Gotham. I never thought about it. Is it as bad as Gotham? Yeah.
It doesn't look that way. And
Oh, yeah. I made it beautiful on purpose.
yeah, it's gorgeous. Your art is beautiful,
Thank you,
but
thank
the
you.
design of this particular underground bunker, it is vast. I
Yeah.
had to remind myself when I was reading it because they're flying cars. That's how big it is underground. And I had to remind myself, Rod, this is all underground. This isn't out in the open. But you have flying cars. The technology is wide.
Those, yeah. We
And the
sell-
design of it, I
we have
commend.
green architecture. Thank you.
Oh,
And that was
because-
another big thing felt like I needed to have. I really wanted to show a world because always we see cyberpunk is always super dark and grungy. But I wanted
Blade
to,
Runner-esque.
exactly. And I love Blade Runner.
I do too.
So I was like, all right, it's underground, but there's going to be a way that they're able to bring in the natural world. And so I thought it was beautiful and important to make sure that the Black people were the ones who were like, hey, we're the only ones that grow our own food. We have these giant geodomes and conservatories where we have basically grown our own trees, plant life. Obviously, that would be good. There would be a lot of oxygen because of that, clean air. But they utilize light, I guess the best possible light that we have that would simulate the natural sunlight.
Okay.
And they have their own fusion reactors. In the Garden District, it is sustainable and an example of what the rest of the world or the underground districts could look like and model themselves afterwards, but the other corporations choose not to for money reasons.
Okay, so that makes sense. And it's very bright, it's very beautiful. Now, there are darker corners of the bunker, but I really do like how it is so different because, as you said earlier, so many post-apocalyptic and dystopian stories, they copy from either Blade Runner or Mad Max, and you can have corruption and it be shiny and bright and gleaming. And
Exactly.
green as well.
Exactly.
So I like the way that you depict that in your book. You say it's a seven episode. See, I'm used to, to 7-book series. I know that you have pretty much a lot on your plate with just what the struggles are with Lana and her underground bunker, but do you intend on exploring the other bunkers that are in other geographic regions, like you mentioned, the Asian
Yes.
and the
Yes.
African? Okay.
Yes. I do want to try Flying City and I want to do a underwater city.
That's awesome.
That's what I'm thinking. That's all
I
I'm
want
gonna
to
say.
ask you, but I know you can't tell me more. No spoilers,
Fine.
but that just gives us something to really be excited for, to come down the pipe. So I also wanted to talk about the relationship between Lana and the Eve Syndicate. And also there is, and I'm looking at my notes.
Okay.
The Blackguard, the Kingdom, the Nubian Brotherhood. So what are these other opposing factions and what is her relationship to them?
Okay. So let's start off with the Blackguards. So the Blackguards are these sentient android beings, and their consciousness were all born from one Black guy who was a scientist. and his brain was trapped in a computer. So it sounds like Tron. I love that idea, just like augmentation. But I wanted to push it a step further and think about the idea of like, if my brain was stuck in a computer for 300 years and I explored the internet and I was just like almost this godlike being, what would happen? I would just start creating different personalities.
Okay.
And so I really wanted to show these androids also seek to be seen as humans. And they eventually try to look more and more human,
Okay.
but like Black human. And intentionally they like they relate themselves with like Black identity and just various aspects of our culture across the diaspora. So that's their backstory, but the ones that we meet are ultimately going to be, or most of them are these kind of tactical forces, squadrons, guard protectors that go with Lana, the Shadow Queen, on different missions. And
you definitely see that in operation in the first
Yeah,
one. I thought that was fascinating.
yeah, so that's them. And then the Nubian Brotherhood is, earlier I said, a pro-Black capitalist group. The Nubian Brotherhood protects that area is called the Kingdom. So that's where all the pro-Black capitalists are. And so the Nubian Brotherhood, they agree with Black people having wealth, but they're on a morally dark side where they believe that, hey, we will sell drugs, people, we will kill people. We're mercenaries at heart. We will do all these things to make sure we have as much money as possible as we can have. But there's another nuance of the misinterpretation of the Egyptian or Kemetic tradition.
Okay.
So similar in the book, if you notice, Lana intentionally changes a reference to the Bible, Christian Bible. The Nubian Brotherhood have taken Anubis and these different deities and distorted them to fit a certain goal or way of life in a very patriarchal way.
Okay.
If you listen to the True Prophet, he's a floating voice for now. You'll understand him. He's very, very pro-Black, but misogynistic.
That sounds familiar, though.
Yep. A lot of things have happened over the past year that have been reminding me of why I wrote the character. They're basically inspired by like Hebrew Israelites, the dark aspects of the Nation of Islam, like all these different organizations like mixed into one in a way.
So it's such a rich fabric of characters that you have created in this world, and it really feels fully realized from the first issue. You get that sense of history and you get that sense of backstory and also tradition too, and mythology. And that's quite remarkable for a first issue of a story. And you've packed so much into it that I know you said it's 7 issues. Do you intend on expanding that?
Yeah.
I'm asking all the good questions.
You're asking too many questions, Rod. Too many. So
that's my job, man.
I just did an outline of what would happen in each issue. This happened, 2021, early 2021 when I started writing.
Okay.
And I did plan for like maybe potentially issue number 8. I wouldn't call it issue number 8. I would refer to it as the epilogue. I think that was what I looked at.
Okay.
But it would show what happened after, when all the dust settles. I'll say that, when the dust settles and next. I've thought about that as well. Okay. But we'll see. But yeah, there's room for infinite stories. Like I'm working on a more kid-friendly story right now that focuses solely in the Garden District. And you're looking at these 2 Black kids growing up with their robotic butler, friend, helper, whatever you want to call it. I don't even like using those terms. So I'm not a huge fan of that.
Yeah.
That robot's a part of the family.
Okay.
Their robotic kind of sibling, older sibling, as they kind of learn these different concepts related to STEAM. So every issue. So that one's going to be 5 comics total within that little small story arc where like each comic is a representation of STEAM. Science, technology, engineering, or art, mathematics. Yeah. But I really want to do a story that's more centered at like education, middle school, elementary school kids. And you get like these cool kind of these cool science fiction moments, but also there's integration of real world science. So that's going to be a main focus in this series for children, is that there's like real world science being used, mathematical concepts that you can research, real things. And I was working with a friend who's an engineer. And as he was telling me about things, like he was like, there's a bacteria in plant that's, I think, underneath soil that can be converted into of limitless energy. and the bacteria can be converted into electricity. But the point is, when he told me that, I was like, oh, I love this. This is like one of the reasons why like I enjoy Star Trek when they have the super sciencey moments where like integrating real world science. So I was like, it's important that more kids, especially Black kids, get to see, hey, you can learn physics. You could learn physics at 10 or 12.
Absolutely.
It's possible. It's totally possible. You can do all these things. And because a lot of people, I feel like we live in this world where we become so limited in our thinking and what we can achieve. And once we unlock that, we're pretty much unstoppable.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. And you mentioned Star Trek too. And I think we touched on this. We chatted at VirtuousCon, but one of the reasons I love Star Trek is because it is important to have real world science integrated into science fiction, but there's also room to imagine what technology can be like and how it can serve us. And that can influence the real world as well. Because the original, every Star Trek series, I should say, but really when you go back and look at the original series, those first communicators, when you look at flip cell phones and also the little tablet that they would give the captain the sign, they had a flat screen. And then with the next generation that came decades later, they used touch controls. And this was in 87. That was unheard of. And now we have our phones, we have our tablets. Yeah, it's really important. And I love the fact that the technology that you show in your series is wild. I'm like, I wish I had this kind of imagination. Like when Shadow Queen puts the people that are in physical distress in stasis. That stasis.
Oh, yeah, the Corey shell that transformed into a
Yes. Yeah.
That was fun. I'm trying to remember what I made that I was like, what was coming to my mind? And I think probably there was something I feel like I watched recently that reminded me of that. And I was like, oh, God, that's cool. That was a fun little moment.
Oh, it was beautifully depicted, man. There's so many. And you also draw kick-ass action shots. So for anybody out there that's listening, trust there's plenty of action in this first issue. And I can imagine I have to definitely get the rest of the other 6 so I can complete the set. Which brings me to my other question. Do you intend on collecting the 7 issues into a collected set?
Oh, yes. When this is done, there's going to be a trade. That's definitely going to be a trade. It's going to have a unique cover that's not going to be done by me. It'll be done by somebody else.
Oh, fantastic.
For sure. But there's going to be a trade, though. I can't wait for that. It's going to be some years, but I will have it.
You never know, man. You never know what might transpire. So hopefully it won't be that long, but hey, I'll wait because again, it's beautiful.
Appreciate it.
Now, I don't mean to put you on the spot again, but you do have a background in animation.
Yeah.
This series would lend itself well to animation. And
that's
I know
what everyone says. That's what everyone says.
What are your feelings on that?
As a person who understands the labor involved in animation, I knew when I first made this, I just want to have something to show to the world because animation takes so much time. If I had animated this, I probably wouldn't have had anything to show for it now at this time. If I was animating in 2021 and I was like doing like a 3-minute animation while like having a job, it would by myself would probably take 2 or 3 years. It would take a long time.
And I think the layperson and the casual consumer, they don't often grasp how difficult it is to do an animated project in terms of the time and the resources. And it is
and
to
it's
do
also
it well.
expensive. Yes. Yeah. And then when we get into the reality of it, and which is one person can do it, but it's going to take a long time. So then you have to think about the cost for animation itself. And I'm like, yeah, we're not even there. It's not to that point. But my goal is to, once I've built enough of my following with the series and just gain more traction over the next couple of years, I'd like to pitch it to an animation studio so they can produce it. So I can just be like, oh, this is great. Because as a person who studied animation, I've realized as I got older, I really enjoy like directing more, less and less of doing the physical animation. Unless I'm part of a massive team or something small scale that I know I can do by myself, that's little work, then sure, that's great. But I really enjoy watching people come together to create this thing and to see the final image. That's the fun part. It's like, that's when the magic kind of happens. Like, you just see when everything finally comes together. And I'm like, I feel my position is to now be more of a director, storyboarder. I still storyboard. Like, that's my thing. Like, planning out shots is something that will never go away because it's so integral to storytelling and animation. But yeah, that's been a priority for now, just be on the writing side of things. So I can't wait till I'm in a place where I can either have the right team of people to actually produce it. And I don't know. I was talking to another solo creative entrepreneur about this, and we're joking about just like how someone told me I need to have an agent or a manager to even talk to them about animation. And I was like, this is the game, Jordan. It's like, you're gonna have to play the game, or you can play outside of the system. And like, I talked to my friend who has his own studio, and he's similar to me, but older and more experienced.
Okay.
And he was like, we might have to do this in house because we're already developing properties for other people. And I was like, you know what? You were the first person I should have thought of. I don't know why I was thinking about that, but doing like having this produce animation is for sure on the horizon. But for now, let's get it done. Make sure it's good. Make sure people laugh and cry while they're reading. So when it's information, it's even better because like I have all these ideas. I know I'm still an animator at heart because I'll be listening to music and I'll be like, man, this will be good in EVE of Insurrection. And then I'll come up with a scene, and then I'm like, oh, doing that thing, Jordan. You're slipping back into your old ways. It's like, oh, I don't have my pencil and paper to storyboard this out. We'll revisit it, but the ideas and things are still there.
JP, let me just say, stay encouraged. You're on the right track. And definitely the key too is not only focusing on your work and making it the best that it can be, which I know that's what you do, part of your work ethos, but also relationships. Because I can tell you, you never know what may happen, who may come across your work. Things that might seem out of reach right now, you never, ever know. And so it might seem to you right now that some of your more ambitious plans are beyond your reach, but they may not be. But I just encourage you to continue what you're doing, focusing on the quality of your content, which is excellent. I really was blown away. So I just have to commend you and encourage you. I try to do that with our young Black artists who I see so much potential. Where can, before I ask you where my listeners can go to find out more about you, when I did my research, I know that you also carve time out of your very busy schedule to do nonprofit work. And in your bio, it says that you do work with two nonprofits that I want you to speak on, Afro Charities and Artway Alliance, because I think the mission of those two nonprofits are terrific. So share what both of those organizations are and what their mission is.
Okay. I've worked more extensively with Artway Alliance. Me and Afro Charities, I did an animation project for them, working with a group of students. I think they might have been freshmen in high school. And they just wanted to have a conversation about just like relationships and like what that means. And so I got to work with these kids and develop an animation for them. But in general, just with the Afro Charities, I just think and I keep coming across them out more and more often with like other projects. And so it's just a constant reminder. Afro Charities is like an amazing corporation that literally like, they do such amazing work on just focusing on just Black history. And I think we need to see more of that because there's such a negative image of what the Black community would look like in like the 20s, 30s, or 40s. And if we found more archival records that show Black people just smiling and being happy in this time period, it changes the framework of how you see the past. And just in general, how we were joyous in times that seemed harder or seemed difficult. So I love that they prioritize just Black identity and existence. So that's beautiful.
Absolutely.
And with Artway Alliance, it was a weird happenstance. I met the owner of Artway Alliance at Eric Suggs. I met him at a science fiction convention in 2021, I think. It was either 2021 or 2020. And it was 2020. I remember now. I think that was... See, COVID has just thrown off everything. I think that was one of my last events was in 2020, and I had met Eric and different artists. I was just walking around that science fiction convention, just taking a break, and I decided to talk to this guy. He super cool Black dude, and just like his mission of trying to bring arts and education to conventions is genius. And so I've been doing these for the past, with 2023 now, about 3 years, 3 years,
Yeah.
2 years. I've been going to con. He'll send me an invite, be like, hey, you want to go to those conventions? I'll get a chance to do like a little workshop. And so we've done like these, what are they called? Hero versus villain mashups. And so it's been really fun.
Wow.
For me, it's fun, like being creative on the fly, but then also being able to work with the crowd or attendees, and they can actually come in and draw with us. And so it just creates a beautiful space for everybody to be creative, expressive, and just have a good time.
Oh, that
And,
sounds terrific.
Yeah, doing that has been just really awesome and just fun. And it's pushed me to go more into education and trying to do more of that type of stuff.
That's awesome. Well, I commend you on that. And JP, listen, where can our listeners go to find out about your work? Because not only do you have the Eve of Insurrection, but you do commissions, you also have prints. So where can they go online to find out all about you and discover your beautiful art, man?
So if you go to jpjacksonart.com, you can find all of my comics, artwork. You can also email me if you're interested in contacting me for commissions. You can email me at jpjacksonart@gmail. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at jpjacksonart. So, but yeah, jpjacksonart is the Twitter handle, Facebook, Instagram. So you can find me on those social media platforms.
Very good. And I will make sure to include your website and social media handles in the show notes of this episode so that our listeners can get easy access to it.
Perfect.
JP, man, I enjoyed this. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Cool. Yeah, we finally got a chance to get our schedules aligned and do this. And I'm so glad that we did.
It's been really nice to meet more people who are really engaged with the work. That just warms my heart. So it's just, Rod, you get it. You're like dissecting the themes. You're getting the things I'm talking about. And I'm like, yes, this is important. It's awesome. So thank you so much.
And there you have it. The Eye on Sci-Fi podcast conversation with JP Jackson, the creator of the cyberpunk dystopian comic book series, The Eve of Insurrection. A link to where you will be able to learn more about JP, his art, and of course, The Eve of Insurrection will be included in the show notes of this episode. Just check with your favorite podcast aggregator, or you may visit the7thmatrix.com, where you'll be taken directly to the show notes page for this episode. We also encourage you to visit the7thmatrix.com so that you can explore all of the other terrific indie science fiction and fantasy short films, web series, and other closely related media that we have curated there. While you're visiting the site, I also need to ask you to visit our support section, because without the support of kind and generous listeners like you, we would not be able to keep the lights on here at Eye on Sci-Fi and over at the7thmatrix.com. And we do appreciate that. Make sure to leave us a review and rating wherever you get your podcast, because that does help others find us, and we appreciate that a great deal as well. So that's it for this episode, everyone. Thank you again for joining me, and until the 7th Matrix portal reopens, stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, take a break, escape the mundane, and enter the fantastic. Take care.